Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session. And this one, we are live. Yes, we are live for another fantastic GTA session where you're going to not only going to learn, but also feel a bit wiser. Allow me to introduce myself. And my name is Flavilla Fongang. People are still coming in, so we're going to allow some time for this to happen. I'm a founder of GTA Black Women in Tech and super excited to be here. What a way to start your Monday. What a way to start your Monday, not just sitting at work and doing the usual things, but also learning a bit more from the audience. So people are coming in step by step. Welcome. And I'm going to say welcome for the next 5 minutes because I know that, yeah, things happen. Welcome and happy Monday. Happy Monday. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Flavilla Fongang. I'm founder of GTA Black Women in Tech, and I'm super excited. I'm not going to be by myself today. I'm going to be joined on stage in a few minutes by a fantastic woman. If you don't know her, you definitely want to know her, but also you want to be connected with her. She has been not just, sometimes you have people that you meet and become business contacts, and other people just take things further. That's the type of person that she is. And she used her power to not only serve herself, but to also help other people. So part of this session that we're doing today, part of this conversation that having today is really just to enlighten you, to inspire you, but also to be hopeful about the future and hopeful about the opportunities that are on the table, especially with financial times. So yes, so I'm going to be your host. So we are going to start in a few minutes. I'll give yourself 5 minutes. 11:05. Feel free to chat as well on the side. If you have any questions, we're going to take them at the end of it. So take your time. This is also recorded, so make sure that you are here, especially if you want to have a chance to ask a question to our guest for the day. It's going to be an hour, so sit tight. It's going to be great. So sit tight and just make the best of it. So if you are here, use as well as this as an opportunity to network. So share your name, tell us where you are, and leave your link. If you don't have a Black Rise account, I know I'm talking about another business of mine, but share your LinkedIn account or your Black Rise account, whatever you have is there for that. So as I keep saying, as I say, welcome to this session. My name is Flavilla Fongang, and I'm a founder of GTA Black Women in Tech. And it's going to be a great conversation with one of the top leaders at the Financial Times, giving you some insights in terms of how to navigate this space while not losing your mind, but also make the best of the environment you work with. There's a lot of opportunities at Financial Times, and this is also why we're having this conversation. So if you are looking to change or evolve in your career, stay awake. Stay awake. The opportunities are not always written on blank paper. So that's why it's important to have the right network and know the right people to be there. So by the end of the session, I want to make sure that you do have also take the opportunity to connect with our guest for the day. Do not sit there and just say, fantastic, great session. Connect with that person afterwards, and we can go further. So this is going to be a conversation not like the any other. It's a conversation where we want to talk about inclusion, we want to talk about diversity, but we want to talk about the opportunities still available on the table. And that's very important for you. And no matter where you are, whether you are green, black, yellow, orange, orange, yes, you know what I mean. Everybody's welcome. This is one thing. Inclusion is about everybody's welcome. You probably heard this a few times. Diversity is inviting everybody into the party, and inclusion is inviting them to dance. So we're going to dance today. It's a Monday. I hope you have a great weekend and you're ready to start this week on a high note because we're going to do that together. So allow me to introduce myself again. My name is Flavilla Fongang, and I'm a founder of GTA Black Women in Tech. GTA Black Women in Tech is a non-profit organization which was founded in 2019 with desire to help more Black women get into technology, but also help women who are already in technology thrive and break the glass ceiling. And there's still a lot of work to do. The numbers are obviously the thing that we use as a backup, 0.7%. That's a number of Black women in technology. And when we talk about Black individuals, men as well, it's not really high. And we know that the issues about bringing talent in Europe is super key. So whether you are in tech or whether you are not in tech, this is for you. This is a space, regardless, for you to listen and pay attention. So we're going to allow ourselves in a minute to allow our guests to join in, because I know you're going to tell me when you're ready. I'm waiting for your thumb up when you're ready to join. She's ready to join. So allow me to introduce you to Rukasana Bhaijee. I want to pronounce her name properly, Bhaijee. She's a global head of diversity, equity, and inclusion and a DNR practitioner for a few time. And let me tell you, she's an ex-Warner Bros. She's an ex-EY, and she's an ex-Google, and now she works for Financial Times. So you are in the presence of somebody who is not like any other. So delighted to have you here. Rukasana, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Flavilla. Thank you for having me today, and thank you for your kind words. Indeed, what a great way to start a Monday. I'm super excited to talk to you today.
100%. What a great way to start on Monday to feel excited. What's very important about our session, this is a very active session, means please take note on paper. Don't just take this information and go and do nothing about it. Share it with your company, share it with yourself, or act on it immediately. I think the best way to start, because some people don't know you. I know you, but they probably don't know you, and we're not going to take the assumption they do either. Maybe you can start in terms of your journey and what led you to become one of the key leaders and your journey to working for Financial Times right now.
Oh, wow. And I'll try and do this succinctly. I've been in the space of diversity and inclusion and HR for over 13 years now. I fell into HR after a career break. This is actually my third career, and I've been doing it for 13 years. And I fell into HR and people management. And I stayed because I was fascinated by the power of people to be the engines that drive organizations, and the power of people that are led well and led inclusively and thoughtfully, to build high performing teams that ultimately drive success for organizations. That might be financial or otherwise. And across all the organizations I've been in, that's the thread across all the organizations. And that's been my motivation, really about leveraging talent across lines of difference to build organizations that work well. And that's what keeps me in HR and people management.
I love it. I love it. I want to jump right into the subject. What do you think is the most common assumption leaders make when it comes to managing people, but also for people who maybe haven't been promoted in a while, and the common assumption that they make, both sides from a manager point of view, but from someone who's part of a team and maybe you're still waiting to be promoted and get the job, the next opportunity.
Great question. So assumptions that individuals make, but also
Yeah.
managers make.
Mm,
From an assumptions that managers make, they might make assumptions about what people need or want at any stage of their life, and people are at different seasons of their life, and
right.
success looks different depending on the season you're in. But nobody can make an assumption about what Ruxana needs. Someone needs to ask me. So sometimes managers make assumptions based on protective hesitation or benevolence bias, and they make assumptions about what people need. Or maybe they don't care and they don't ask the right questions. Not that they don't care. Let me rephrase that. Um, they might not be switching on their inclusive leadership capability to ask the curious questions,
Mm-hmm.
or actually they might not care. But quite often it is assumptions. So as individuals, you can't assume that your manager knows what you want. You can't assume that your manager is thinking about you in the same way that you are thinking about your success.
Correct.
For individuals, I would say don't make an assumption that other people know your needs, wants, capabilities, strengths. Be open about vocalizing it. Be open about how you thinking about your own strategic plan for whatever season of success you need in your life.
100%. You know, I cannot agree enough with you. When I was before becoming an entrepreneur, I've been employed in the past, and that's probably was the biggest mistakes that I made. That I was hoping that somebody would notice me, and I would sit at my desk and wondering why the others were getting promoted and I wasn't getting promotion. Right? It's because I never was vocal about what I wanted. So we would assume that I was happy in the role that I was, but actually telling people who can support you or even directly your manager, then they can work with you to choose a path. And the other side as well is that whatever the assumption that you make because she's a mother, she's happy where she is and whatsoever, and so on, but you don't know how far people are ready to take the job. So this is a very good answer and I can really relate to that. So obviously you worked like me across a number of industries, from media to tech to professional services and higher education. So how do you connect the dots to your journey? How have you utilized? I think there's so much beauty about changing industry. How have you utilized that for what you do right now?
Yeah, I think when it comes to some of the organizations I've been in, I've been very privileged to work at organizations like EY as part of my D&I journey, and somewhere like EY, where they focused on inclusion as a business imperative. Back in 2013, they probably made that switch from this is a people compliance thing to this is a business imperative. This will help to power our organization. And somewhere like that, something that's really stayed with me is the power of leadership accountability, leadership buy-in, leadership voice, to really embed DEI across the organization. And so it's not the DEI team doing the doing, it's actually every business leader, every organization, whether you're finance, whether you're resourcing, is thinking about their role, their responsibility, and how they can help the organization's mission when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's one EY lesson. And even somewhere like Google, something that's really stayed with me is the power to, I was at Google through COVID and also for racial reckoning post George Floyd's murder. And what stayed with me is the power at somewhere like Google to build deep relationships to drive change. And in a really difficult period, because I wasn't meeting people across EMEA, which was my region, I wasn't meeting people in person, but still through this, the power to build relationships somewhere like Google, which is huge, that's really stayed with me. It's a special place to build deep connection.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially those companies who are global entities. You have to have an objective as much as possible landscape when you look. I mean, vision when you think about diversity, and that's super key. You know, it's funny because when I look at us, both of us, we are visually visible diversity. Like I say, minorities, should I say, in terms of diversity, and that has not stopped us for achieving what we want. And a lot of people sometimes use that as, or maybe think that the visible minority will stop us. You wear a headscarf, I'm a black woman, we are visible, and you are at the top, you are one of the leaders. You've been leader for a number of years for the top companies. So what advice would you give to someone right now who think that maybe the fact that they're a visible minority might stop them from achieving their goals?
Yeah, I guess I would say own the space you're in. So really step into the space, uh,
Mm.
make yourself known. And some people that might have heard me speak before, something I always say is, because we are visibly different, people remember us.
Yeah.
People remember what we say when we say it.
Mm.
So owning the space means taking the space and really leveraging the space. So yeah, owning it and leveraging it. And then when you speak, when you say something, when you make contributions, when you dive in, people will notice and people will remember, and not being afraid to take up space. I think going back to almost the last question as well about the assumptions piece, historically, some people of color, and I'm not speaking for everyone or every person of South Asian heritage, but my parents definitely told me, keep your head down, work hard, and things will happen. But that's not the case. You need to lift your head up. Yes, work hard, but lift your head up, take space, share, speak, and own your space. Don't be afraid to share your contributions.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is such thing that we say a lot, and our parents have told us, and this is a new generation, and we need to do things differently if we want to achieve different results, right? Let's talk about Financial Times. Obviously, now you work for Financial Times, and we want to know, as the global head of D&I, what is your focus for 2025?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. Obviously, 2025 is a year of disruption when it comes to my arena, but when it comes to the FT, and what I'm doing, I joined the FT back end of 2023. So 2024, I set out a new strategy after joining. So 2025 for me and my team is all about continuing to embed the strategy and building on last year's foundations. So in essence, what that means in terms of actions is really a focus on building leader and manager capability to understand how to lead with inclusion front of mind, and addressing any disparities in access to our organization, and starting to address any disparities in the experience for our people at the FT. So some examples of this is really a focus on early careers activities. We run a program called New School, which is honestly groundbreaking, and it's one that really excites me. And also starting to build a plan for neuro inclusion. So in terms of the experience of our people, really listening to our community and starting to think about what neuro inclusion looks like. So yeah, it's an exciting year ahead amidst all of the external noise as well.
Yeah, it's true. And it's funny, it's interesting because when we started working together, I always thought that my guys people have a certain perception when they think about Financial Times, they think all this institution and and so on. And when you get into there, it's fresh, it's dynamic, people are young and excited, they want to see change. And it's a completely different image of what I've imagined. So maybe what has been your experience? You've been in Financial Times for a year now. I can't remember how much time, but how has it been like? Especially going from one tech company to another now, media.
Yeah, it's great question. And yeah, but any perceptions you have of the FT, I would just chuck them out the window because I've been an FT reader for 30 years and I've seen the FT evolve, which makes me sound really old, I know, because I've been reading the FT for 30 years. But I've been an FT reader for 30 years and I've seen even the publication content evolve over time.
Mm,
And even like 30 years ago, we probably wouldn't have had content about mental well-being, about like communication strategies, how to spend it. I don't know if that existed then, but any any perceptions you have, throw them out the window. It really is, I would describe it as legacy media because it has a great heritage. It's legacy media with a startup mindset. We value entrepreneurial thinking, we value creativity, innovation. One of my first questions at my interview at the reception was, can I wear trainers at my interview? Like, I've got trainers on. I like my white trainers with this dress. Can I keep them on? And they just laughed and said, yeah, you can wear whatever you want. So yeah, it's a really great place to be. I've been here over 18 months. I'm having fun, and yeah, we're doing some really fun things like partnering with Black women in tech because we care about representation. We want our organization to be representative of the demographics we're operating in globally. And yeah, we're really keen to partner.
yes, a key to partner. And I think this is important to do the right partnerships because it sends a message to people who are part of our community to think that there's a place for them. And I think that if people think about, as I say, like whatever vision you had, the Financial Times, trust me, take them away. If you get a chance to come to one of the events, I'm sure we're doing events together, you will see that this is completely different from what you've ever imagined. It's funny because we talk about inclusion and DNI, behind the camera, behind the paper, but what it is means when you think about media organization, when it comes to also the piece and what is being produced by the company, how is that represented? I really want to understand in terms of how do you play around and also around what it is represented by the actual product by the Financial Times.
Yeah, we're very lucky. We have an editor, Rula Khalaf, who thinks proactively about this. And even before she came into role, we've had a real focus on understanding industry standards. So when the 50/50 project was launched by the BBC, the FT editorial team started to really think about what 50/50 representation in terms of gender parity of voices and people who are quoted, images. So it's something the newsroom did organically. We have a style council that thinks about language when it comes to diversity and representation. We have somebody focused on editorial diversity and the challenges of the newsroom specifically, and that individual has a full day job, head of video and audio, but also thinks about editorial diversity. So I feel like it's proactively managed. What I can say is, from a workforce perspective, the impact that we have when we're thinking about diversity at a workforce level and a wider organization level, the power for me comes with the ripple effect to create that societal change with what is published externally as well, through the power of having diverse representation across the organization, the power of different perspectives across our global regions. So yeah, it's you can tell I'm getting excited by it because the power to create change beyond our four walls globally is, yeah, it's huge.
Absolutely. And the power of your ability to have a voice, it's super key. So utilizing either internally in the background, but also utilizing it forward, what the readers of FT will also consume is super important to just open their mindset. And obviously now with everything over the geopolitics, it's impossible to feel like we are separated from what is happening in different places of the world. And we've seen a lot of companies step down and cancel the DNI agenda, DNI programs. It hurts. I'm not going to mention a company, but one of the very large companies who have a number of contracts with the US government had to really cancel their women program, or they can keep their program, but they can't use the word woman. which I found fascinating, but not in a good way. So how obviously this is not the case for FT, which is good. You have not stepped down for that. What are your thoughts, especially with everything that's happening, and how can we respond to it?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Mm,
Um, what for me, what I really see is this moment that we're in, this season that we're in now, is an opportunity for organizations to dial into their own values, like what matters to them at their core, their hearts, their minds, when there is economic and political disruption. So it might mean that organizations are adapting, reframing, resetting. Um, and for me personally, I see this as a moment to think about, okay, this is a moment to pause, reflect. Should there be a review of activities? What are the lessons learned from however many years an organization has been doing what they've been doing? Has there been rigor in that process? Um, like with any project that you're managing, right? As an ex-consultant, I would always, if I've delivered a project, pause, look at lessons learned, what could have been done differently, is there rigor behind this, is there ways to improve, what's the even better if. So for me, I see this moment as a necessary and valuable reset. So when I talk to peers at some organization that have made headlines,
yeah.
potentially the work is continuing, but it might look different.
Ah.
It might be reframed, or even if programs are phased out, or language might be shifting, job titles might be tweaked, but maybe some are keeping their head down and carrying on because, again, it's not fully clear what's legal, what isn't. But
Mhm.
when it comes to doing this work, I think the key is um, understanding that organizations like the FT have always focused on leveling the playing field versus lifting. So there's always been an element of how do we level the playing field. We recognize that there hasn't been fair access for opportunity. We recognize that there hasn't been fair access to progression, development. So how do we continue to level the playing field and evolve areas or systems that need to be tweaked?
I love your answer is so strong, and there's few things that I want to summarize from what you say. First is, you know, follow your actions and strategy. Step back a little. I think sometimes we're so much in something we don't see the full picture. So step back a little, look at your numbers, and pivoting. I think this is something that we've done as well with some of the approaches how we are working with certain projects that we have. We talk less about DNI as such. We talk more about digital skill gap. So you can still carry the same activities, but how can you pivot in your language to still carry the values? But again, it comes back to what you say: are your values strong? And sometimes people just think short term. This is a journey that will take years, and it doesn't take. It can't be it can't happen over 6 months or a year. You have to be patient for progress that you want to see. And sometimes people are just quit too soon. Unfortunately, I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I agree. We're in it for the long game, right? We're in it to, there's no silver bullet, there's no quick fix. I've been doing this for 13 years, and I know that we've made progress societally in terms of some societal structures. When I started this, shared parental leave wasn't in place. So really thinking about what societal structures, policies,
Mm.
provisions need to be in place. When I started this, there wasn't things like, equal parenting leave. Right
Ah.
now, an organization, enhanced parental leave exists. So really shifting systemic structures societally as well as organizationally takes time, right? And we need people to continue advocating. What I also don't want people to do is take their foot off the gas, because even if we're focused on tech and thinking about the pace of AI change,
Mhm.
if we look at the stats for women in AI, we looking at early research and data, I'm noticing that we have, in terms of AI fluency, AI usage, women are using AI less. And I don't want people, the DEI focus for me, in especially now, is very much how do we continue to have a conversation in tech, as well as STEM more broadly. How many women are becoming fluent in AI usage? How many women are becoming confident? And then of those women, how many women of color are using AI regularly? Are we keeping that up to pace? So there's definitely conversations like that I want to focus on, as well as focusing on the moment that we're in.
Mm,
Um, I don't want the moment to distract from things we all need to think about.
absolutely. And one thing that we need to think about, and you've been a strong, fighter for race equity and an amazing ally. And one thing that I would say to the audience listening to this, Rukasana has been really one of my strongest allies. She's really helped us with some of the projects that we've done in the beginning when nobody wanted to support us. She was like, "Yeah, I don't already, I don't need to know the details. I can see the vision." And you just need people like that. So people were thinking, I'm a great ally. What advice would you give to really leading with not only leadership but allyship embedded in it? What does it look like?
Yeah, and again, even in moments like this, it's who's still showing up, who's showing up in those moments that really matter, and not just showing up, but then utilizing your voice and space. So if you're not able to take up space, is there a leader there showing up, taking up space that they naturally have because of their power or their privilege, and speaking up for someone? So if you're listening and you want to be demonstrating allyship or advocacy, how are you speaking up? Or even if you're asking yourself questions, ask yourself questions like, who are you demonstrating active sponsorship for? Or ask yourself other curious questions like, um, how can I challenge or unpack this particular conversation if it's about someone's development or progression? Is
Mm,
it fair? Is it fair? Is there anything about the status quo right now in the world that I'm maintaining? Or could I do something to
yeah.
disrupt the status quo? So an ally is someone that questions constantly. I feel like, as especially in the age of AI, we're going to want leaders that question, that are curious, that challenge, that aren't afraid to ask the tough questions. Sometimes it's not even tough questions, it's asking the most basic questions
Yeah,
like, whose voice is not in the room when I'm thinking about this piece of tech? Whose voices are missing?
100%. I was giving a talk in Copenhagen a few weeks ago, and I was explaining how they had a bunch of engineers who designed this soap that will dispense it as you put your hand in it. So when a white hand went underneath, the soap
Yeah.
came out. The black hand, people have seen. If you've never seen it, check it out. It's very interesting. It just showcases how sometimes people thinking about D&I and inclusion as a nice to have. Oh, everybody needs to have a voice. No, no, no. It's also first of all a commercial value, and by not having people, and we know we don't need to, people in a room know that it's important, but sometimes they don't. If people only able to associate with commercial value, they don't pay attention. And that brings me back to the next question, which is around inclusion. So people are in a room right now maybe wondering, is my company inclusive? What question, or what will showcase that they are an inclusive company? What should they be looking for?
Yeah, great question. And I guess beyond the dashboards and your people engagement, every organization probably has an inclusion survey or inclusion questions embedded in their survey, which will give their leaders, their managers, an understanding, their people teams, an understanding of how people are feeling in terms of an engagement score when it comes to inclusion. But
Mm,
quite often beyond the dashboards, it's the everyday sentiment in the culture that you feel. And it might be people are feeling psychologically safe. People, and what that means is they're able to share their honest opinions, even if they're not popular or even if they may cause dissent, they can share them and know that it's safe to share. It's
mm,
knowing that as a person of color, that your voice will influence decisions. And it's for me, it's about the everyday behaviors, not just policies. It'll show up in who stays, who progresses, who has the space to speak up, and how leaders take responsibility for building belonging and for how they're intentional about creating an inclusive culture. So who are they asking about their weekends? Who are they
mm.
checking in on Slack? Is it just the people that look like them, sound like them, or is it everyone?
Yes, that's a good point. It's a good point. Do you feel like your voice matters? Do you feel like people care about you? Do you feel that sentiment is such an important thing because you can't really necessarily measure it as through numbers, but you can still track it in some form of way. So if nobody asks you how you feel about your job, you probably know it was exclusive company whatsoever. And there's one thing about bringing, people say, yeah, it's great, we bring a lot of people, but you see also very high turnover. So you're trying to bring inclusion to the overwork, but then what do we do to actually keep them, people of different background? So I guess, when it comes to that stack, what have you seen as some of the work that work really well, and also maybe things that you as at the Financial Times do to make sure that people feel not just, okay, you got the job, but I feel like they want to stay.
Yeah, and there's always lots of work to do, and I am someone that thinks it's always even better if. So even somewhere like the FT, I mentioned just being a reader and seeing the content change, but even as an organization, they've worked really hard, even before they had a D&I lead, to do things like halve the gender pay gap, which is
Yes.
so powerful, achieve gender parity across the organization. So when it comes to, it's one of the reasons I joined was that I saw the evidence, I saw the receipts that they are committed to doing the work and not just saying the right words, which many organizations can do. I feel like the FT is committed to doing the work, and they've proven that. And what I've seen since I've joined is, yes, we've done great work, and there's a lot more to do. So when it comes to the work that we want to do, I've mentioned the importance of inclusive leadership. We want to continue to embed inclusive leadership accountability, because for me, when this work is done well, it really is led by leaders, managers, the people with the power to make those everyday decisions, because I can do the coaching and the guiding, but I'm not hiring people, I'm not progressing people, I'm not deciding performance reviews or pay reviews or ultimately things that will impact people's lives. It's our managers and leaders that are doing that. So if I can focus on them and work on them, hopefully in time that will focus on the behavioral element and the being intentional about conscious inclusion.
Yes.
We'll also need to do is focus on systemic processes. So again, there's some really, in terms of our benefits policies, we've got great parental cover. I mentioned things like fertility leave, menopause leave, reproductive leave, which didn't exist previously. So even
It's good.
structurally, there's change. Great leave. I feel like I'm just doing a promotion now for the FT. From a systems perspective, we've got a lot in place which wasn't there previously, but there's more we could be doing, right? When it comes to inclusive hiring still, and are all our hiring managers aware of their potential of their own bias? Do they know about how to mitigate bias? Do we do that in performance management as well? What else in terms of that employee life cycle do we need to do? So things I'll be focused on is things like embedding inclusive leadership, but also helping the organization to design for equity. And almost like you mentioned with the inclusive soap dispensers, if someone had baked inclusion into the process of the build,
Yeah.
same for everything we do here, even with our products. We have some really proactive, curious developers that are asking the right questions about even alt tech. So our users on ft.com, on our app, can, if they're visually impaired, they can have the right alt text. So we've got curious people asking product inclusion questions, which I think wouldn't have happened a few years ago. So inclusion by design is something that takes intention, and that's across the organization, there's so much work to do in the inclusion by design space.
Yeah. What you're describing is so important, is really recognizing like your difference is your superpower, and utilize it not to actually embed it in your work as you describe it, so that you, again, it comes back to asking the right question. People often think that success comes to doing the right thing. They actually start by asking the right questions, and that is really the key. And as a team, do you understand the role that you play into the development of a new product? Do you understand the vision that the company has, and so forth? But one thing that I've noticed that you do, and you don't realize, but you ask the right question during the interview. You seem to be asking the right question. People sometimes don't ask those questions, and maybe they join a company and they realize, oh, sugar, I actually don't like it here. What do you think are some of the key questions? Anybody who wants to make sure that they are not a token employee, but really being hired for the right reason.
Great question.
Mm.
I think for me, it depends on what's important to you. So if you're interviewing for something, like know who you are and know what your values are and what your purpose is. So your motivations might be different. Like you might be um, focused on building generational wealth, which is so
Mm,
important for people of color. And that money might be a driver. So really knowing that the balance sheet, the financial capability, is the business going to IPO? What's the health of the balance sheet? How has the organization performed? So if that's your motivation, focus on that as well as culture. If from someone like me, the kind of question, I know I'm a purpose-led individual. My goal is to yes, help organizations build high-performing teams through leveraging diversity and
yeah,
building inclusive cultures. But for me, as part of that, what's really important is that I'm continuing to help people from underrepresented backgrounds um, build careers that they're proud of and they can thrive. So all of my questions will be centered on, like, what are you actually doing? What have you delivered in terms of opening access to your profession? What do you want to be doing? What's your vision for this work? So it really depends on who you are and your motivators, and owning that as well. Like whatever your motivators, really think about what matters to you in an organization. It does matter to me that this organization makes money and is healthy in terms of its balance sheet, because ultimately, like, we all work because we need to get paid, right? But yeah, whatever matters to you.
yeah, it's such a great point. Like, what is important? You need to decide what you want. If money is important, then it is. When you have, financial safety, then okay, then you move to something else. And as you progress, your motivation will change, right? So I do remember that my motivation at the beginning was just pure, let me get a job. And then sometimes was I want a title, or I want this, or
Yeah.
whatsoever. Sometimes it's the title, sometimes it's the money, sometimes it's the power influence, sometimes is leadership, whatever it is. But I think it's decide exactly in which phase of your life you are, and study accordingly. I'm thinking about whether coming back to sentiment. When we think about DNI, everybody say, "Oh, DNI is dead," and da, 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 and so on. But you seem like you're very optimistic about the future of DNI. Maybe where do you see the next, the next frontier of this work for you?
Yeah, I know. Most people probably aren't optimistic right now. I, I'm a natural optimist, so for me, this current moment has been as well as the pause. It's actually, this is an opportunity. It is a pivotal moment in time to think about diversity and inclusion in a different way. And I've already talked about inclusion by design. And I feel like it is an opportunity, because of the pause, because of the sentiment globally and political unrest across the globe. It's not even one particular area. Um, it is an opportunity to think about inclusion by design
Yeah,
in every process, in every moment that matters, and really an opportunity to embed inclusive thinking, inclusive questions into um, leadership frameworks or wider
100%.
organizational leadership programs. Does it need to be an inclusive leadership program, or does an organization's leadership framework or leadership competencies or behaviors, does that contain inclusive leadership capability? Does a hiring process contain the right questions to open access to all talent and the widest possible talent pool? Who is in this talent pool in this region? So I think, back to the inclusion by design, for me, this is the right moment to really get this right, which
Yeah.
I think some have been trying to do, but some have been narrowing the pool versus broadening the pool.
100%. It's interesting because, and again, I don't want you to comment on this, I don't get you in trouble, but I think that DNI has been done quite often incorrectly, and this is why we have such a backlash now. But the companies who have done it right or have aiming to do it right will still do it no matter what, because they understand the value and the long-term value of doing it, not just because it's a tick box exercise where the joyful situation, you've done it or whatsoever. But if you actually embedded it and understand how it will benefit your business, you will never step down from that. You will just continuously doing it. So if you think about now, I want to talk more about Black women. So Black women who are thinking about a career in media, because funny, because when you think about Financial Times, we don't necessarily think about a tech company, but every company should have a tech leg or tech arm, or as I say. And I don't know the readership of online and offline of the newspaper. Okay, probably just vary according to the age, but the online space of FT is as important and probably even more important, right? So what advice would you give to any Black woman right now thinking about starting career in technology and even in media?
Yeah, I'd say jump in. Like
Jump
we
in.
need, we need representative voices. Even when I go to something like the NCT, like if it's tech, when I go to say the NCTJ Awards, which is the National Council for the Training of Journalists, I'm so proud to see people of color in the room because we need those stories. But when it comes to the tech, the engine, the power that's driving our stories, we need representation in there as well for all the reasons we've already talked about: the soap dispenser, the hand dryers, the tech that's not fully representative. I'd say jump in, because as an organization, we know that there's a lot of work to do in terms of what we are, but the external perception still of who the FT is and who the FT is for. Even when it comes to our engaged women readers, we know that there's still work to do. And we can only start changing that if we start to intentionally tell people who we are and what we are and who we're for. So we're doing that with our content, but we also want to do that with our employee base. So if you haven't checked us out before, go to the About Us careers pages, sign up to our talent community, follow us on Life at FT Instagram to see who we actually are. And then you'll see some of those perception shifting, hopefully. Jump in.
Yes, I think it's important what you describe is that jump in. Sometimes you don't need to know the full journey to your map. I don't know if I'm saying the right way, of the full destination, but you need to start somewhere. Just take the first step, and the first step is just jumping in. And again, it comes by people often create their own limitation and says, "Oh, I need to have money, I need to have this and whatsoever." Sometimes you just need to have the awareness of the opportunities available, and getting as much as possible connected to the brand will help you get there. And then when you build your network, the rest just follows, right? So that's super important that people get a sense of that. So don't create barriers in your mind that stop you from what you really want to do. And I'm one of these person that, like you, I've changed careers so many times. I went from fashion to oil and gas to agency world, and now I'm in technology. I mean, every 5 years I do change. Not every 5 years, but every 3 or 5 years I do change. So that gives me, so nothing is stopping you. And I think it comes back to those elements, is that are you able to see your talent beyond just the role, and are you able to see what you bring to the table every time? I don't know how you feel about Rukasana, but that's probably what has helped me pivot with ease. I don't know how you've done it as well.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's being agile even with your own skills, and knowing, again, back to the self-reflection, know your self-worth. You are worth a lot, all of you. And
Yeah.
take time to reflect on I'm going to move my hands because the light's gone off. There we go.
Yeah.
Take time to know your self-worth. What are your strengths, your skills, your capabilities, and how can that be transferred to something else? And even when I was at EY, I did a piece of work for DCMS on cyber and getting into cyber. And even through doing that, I was like, there's no real one pathway into the world of cyber. There's a number of pathways. And, I feel like if you think I'm interested in this and I want to do this, I think anyone is capable of doing anything. So, I mean, I don't know, my fourth career might be in tech specifically. Who
Yeah.
knows? I love that we're about shifting careers, because, I do believe that the power is in knowing that you can be agile, and knowing that if you carve out a space for yourself, it will be there. And the FT is a great place to do that. Someone in our finance team left and moved into the world of tech and is thriving.
Wow.
So the ability to pivot into tech is also something I find quite powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to be in the right industry. Some industries will never die out with, and media and technology is definitely one of them. We want to give people some takeaways, things that they can just say, okay, I can apply this right now as a company or as an organization. So maybe we're going to start with any organization. What can they apply based on that conversation if they're not doing it already? Something that they can do this week to be a better, inclusive company.
Yeah, this week, I'd say start by listening. Are you listening to the people around you? And back to that engage curiosity,
Mm,
listen, engage curiosity, and learn. So that might be questions that you ask yourself. What don't you know about someone's skills?
yeah.
What questions haven't you asked? And what can you do differently to support that individual? And yeah, take time to listen. That's the biggest one. I feel like we don't listen enough as individuals. And if there's allies listen on today listening, take time to listen to the people around you.
Mm. Is it? Is there always there's always a difference between listening and hearing.
Yeah, because you might hear, but you might be already formulating your own response or your own thoughts. Actually listen. What do people around you need? What do they want? What would be helpful? And how can you help?
Mm. So listening, the difference between hearing and listening in that situation is you are acting on it, not just okay, cool, 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 thank you. I will get back to you on this, or and
Mhm.
not taking any action on it. And for anybody who's thinking about a career, we need to talk about Financial Times a little bit more. If they're thinking about a career at Financial Times, what do they need to do this week, maybe, to start getting themselves in motion? Building that pathway to Financial Times.
Yeah, start reading some of our, if you can, read some of our content.
Mm,
Um, check. We've got a great channel. So even if you can't subscribe to the FT, we've got great channels for you to access our content. So there's a number of podcasts. Um, Follow us on YouTube. We do a number of films and videos, some of which are so interesting, which really helped me to prep before my interviews. I watched a lot of the FT YouTube content, which was fascinating. Um, we have our Instagram as well, and Natasha's put the talent community in the chat. So start reading, start following, just noticing what matters to us through some of our socials, and you'll start to get an idea. But yeah, I'd say even if you want to join us, once you start seeing what we're about, really be confident in yourself. So back to the self-reflection, I'm really strong on getting people to know their own self-worth. So when you coming for those conversations, you're coming knowing who you are and what you're bringing, that's going to be helpful to us based on what you've seen from the content that we're
yeah.
putting out into the world.
I love what you said. It took me back to my days when I was looking for a graduate position and I did no prep whatsoever. And I was blagging myself to all those things. And I obviously didn't get anything. And I remember saying to Amazon, I was just like, when I say, oh, do you have a question? They're like, why do people perceive you as a library? Obviously, I never got the job because I did not prep. And I think that is something that is so undervalued and so key to be just stand out from anybody else who just come and look for a job. And this is different between somebody who looks for a job and somebody who's looking for a career. They understand who they work with and they have questions. A lot of people when I say, do you have questions? They know I do have any questions. That's very strange. So you just looking for anything, and desperation screams very, very loud, and I can sense it. That makes it less appealing, isn't it?
100%. You can always tell when someone's engaged and cares about the brand. Like I know it sounds geeky, but I care about the brand because the brand is rooted in, and again, one of our mottos is without fear, without favor. It's trusted journalism. And
Mm,
what matters to me is the power of our stories, and the FT in an age of disinformation, in an age of fake news or clickbait, when many media organizations are putting out content to just get the clicks. I
yes.
feel comfortable working for an organization that cares deeply about the content, that cares deeply
Mm,
about stories that reflect reality, which is now more important than ever.
I love that. I love that. Understand what you're getting. Don't just look for a job, just look for opportunities. We want to live a world of hope. I think simple one word, hope. And hope is important. Hope and a plan and optimism, as you describe it, and commitment, a sense of community. I mean, so many things that are important, and how we serve the world that we live in. So, what is your word of hope for people listening to this episode conversation together?
Mm.
It doesn't
Well,
have to be a word. If it can be multiple words, I made it difficult for you. It can be multiple words.
yeah.
What do you want to leave them with? Something that they can feel, okay, yes, there's still hope despite everything's happening right now.
I'd say I am a person of faith, as visibly Muslim.
Yeah.
So for me, yeah, faith. My faith grounds me in the fact that there is hope. My faith grounds me in the fact that there will always be hope. Um, and I do believe. So when it comes to the work I do hope that there won't be any walls or
Yeah.
hurdles, and we will break through walls and hurdles, and every individual, like on the call and in your community, will have the opportunity to be successful in any role that they want, or if you're entrepreneurs, access to funding. So that for me is the hope, that we can get rid of any walls, any hurdles.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, to just add to what you just say, there's so much one person can do. Is always multiple individuals, us as a community, the choice that we make and how we use our power. I mean, when I think about you, Cassandra, and people who have just met her, she's one of those individuals who use her power not just for herself, but to also help many more people. And this is an impact that you might not be able to measure right away, but in the long run, it will be there. So that's one thing to remember. Let's see if we have any questions. I don't know if we actually open the questions to the audience and see if we can pick up. I don't know. Do you see any questions? I feel like the wheel is turning forever. Maybe we have a technical difficulty and we haven't seen either. Sometimes it does happen. We have something like that. Do you see questions on the side? It seems like we probably have a technical issue doesn't allow people to write their questions. But we have a nice audience in, and if you have just arrived and you missed the end of this session, at the beginning of the session, this is recorded, so you can go back and watch it again. It is there for you. There's a lot of things that is happening at Financial Times. Stay, as I say, stay close. If it's an opportunity that you want to, media and technology is fascinating. I personally like both, either in front or behind the camera, and this is a space that we are here for. So. Do check it out. This is just the beginning of this journey. There's a lot more we are hoping to share with you. Because I don't know if there's anything else that you want to share that you wish maybe I didn't ask you. Maybe what you wish I should have asked you. It's a good question.
Oh, I don't know, but I can see one question.
Oh, you
Does
can? Okay, it's on my side then. I can see the question. Maybe if you want to
from
answer.
Marie, what considerations does FT have in the event design stage for DEI? And Marie, I don't know if you mean in our FT Live events, but we do, from an FT Live events perspective, we do have a Women in Business event specifically, which I guess is the one which has a DEI link specifically, and there's a lot of consideration that goes into that planning of that event that's coming soon in June. We run an FT Women in Business forum that organizations can also sign up to for their communities. And I know when it comes to a DEI lens across our events portfolio, that's something that is a consideration. I don't know the full details, I'll be quite honest, but I know there is a consideration in terms of inclusive design, accessibility. There's consideration there, but I couldn't tell you the full kind of process that they go through. But I can find out if you're interested, Marie. You can follow up with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Please do ask questions. We have a couple of minutes left for taking your questions. This is your chance. After that, we're busy people, so make the best of it. I can't see the questions, but if you can see the question, Rukasana, please do take them as they come. I don't know why my side is technical difficulties happen. This is also the beauty of technology. But it's a good point. Inclusive design is one thing that you mentioned at the beginning, where you have different people from different backgrounds who point out things that are missing out, especially people who may have visual impairment and so it's good to take this into consideration so you don't miss potential subscribers, right? So it's always also commercial opportunities behind that.
Yeah, 100%. It's something, I mean, when I was at Google, Google did really well, like even, and it was employee led, and they had a separate product inclusion team, but it's things like that product inclusion team that really helped even Google to think about taking better pictures for people of color on the Google
Yeah,
Pixel. I don't know if anyone's a Google
yeah,
Pixel fan, but It has real tone technology to take better pictures, probably better than an iPhone. I say as an iPhone user, but yeah,
Yeah.
design for all aspects of your organizations is critical.
That is so true. I've always noticed when my friend, as much as I'm an iPhone for the wrong reason, I'm embedded in it. I love when my friend take photos of Google. It looks so always so much better. What's going on? Maybe we should just get a phone just with the camera. But so often it's sold out. So I was like, well, I need to do something else. But that's one of the elements of it. When you think about inclusion and innovation and how it is interpreted in so many different ways, it's important. But also how we can use technology to change behavior and how people act on it. And I've seen a number of brands have done that. So I'm curious as well as we talk about product and embedding inclusion in the product development. Have we used, is it something that you're open to share about using technology to also change behavior or maybe perception of the brand?
Yeah, potentially. Again, you can be really targeted, right? With some organizations have done that with the use of algorithms and really
Mhm.
targeting content, helping people to see which comes with risks as well. But
Yes.
yeah, it can be used for good when it comes to targeted needs, when it comes to reaching demographics. But it can also then occasionally create echo chambers where we
Yes.
may be creating less diverse perspectives if people are only getting content that's targeted to them. It might be limiting information. So yeah, it's probably a whole separate topic that I could dig into. The hour we can schedule.
100%. We can need the entire conversation. Right. I don't know if there's any more questions. If there's no questions, Rukasana, so one thing that you want, what type of takeaways you want imagining that most people in the room are potential candidates to maybe work at Financial Times at some point of their career. What advice would you say them to do right now? You mentioned about joining, looking at the page of Financial Times. You can also check at the same page, I mean, it's not the same page, a different page designed especially for Financial Times on the GTA Black Women Tech website. So the Black Women in Tech website. You can find the Financial Times page. And again, something we will have some events coming up. So please stay in touch. There's a lot of opportunities. Again, one thing I would say is that if one thing I've learned working for a number of companies, and I was making that mistakes in the past, is that if you don't get accepted on the first time for a job that you apply for at Financial Times or anything else, apply again, right?
Mm.
People often don't get it the first time. Some people get it the third time. Apply again. Do not dismiss it forever. If you don't get the position, whatever you're trying to apply, always apply again. I don't know if there's any other piece of advice you want to share with I guess when it comes to looking for the career of a dream.
Yeah, just being specific with your applications, like take
Mm,
time to keep an eye on the opportunities, be specific
yeah,
about the role, but be specific about your skills and why you
yeah.
make that known, why you.
Mm. I always say, it's funny. I always say to people like, I am the prize. So wherever I go, even when I'm pitching for clients, is that I recognize what is the reason they would choose to work with us, and we
Mm,
do that. So in marketing term, we call that USP, unique selling point.
yeah,
What is your unique selling point? Identify what they are. So if you come against something, if you are from Somalia, how you can utilize that to address this and supporting the brand. Maybe we're tapping to the some Somalia market. I'm just saying random things, but it's important to take into consideration those elements when you're applying. Know what you want, as you mentioned, know what you want, do your research so you
yeah,
don't come empty with actually any background on the company, and be clear and also ask the question that will make sure that this company is inclusive and they really care about your voice. Make sure that you feel part of the company and you enjoy. I think that often is a misunderstanding that you should choose between having a job and be happy. So people, I look forward for a weekend. For me, it's like I look forward for Monday. This is an exciting Monday, right? Because I
mm,
chose a job that I really enjoy, and vice versa. We're having a conversation. Oh my gosh, it's almost the end of the session, and it's been fantastic. And I hope that all our guests have been able to take away a lot of great things. Again, this is available on replay afterwards for anybody who's watching who has to leave now, but I hope that you enjoyed the session. Rukasana, it was such a pleasure to have you. And I can't wait for doing more. Yeah, I can't wait for us to do more together. We've done so much of it together, and there's so much more in the pipeline for us, but also our community and the talent that will thrive at FT. I've made it rhyme, not on purpose, but it worked really, really well. For everybody listening, please make sure that you leave some comment, connect with Rukasana afterwards. Please do not send a blank LinkedIn request. Make sure to write a message so she can really identify you among the all individuals sending a connection request. Do that and have a great Monday. Make sure that you take some action by the end of the day so you can benefit and take your Monday to another level. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you very soon. Bye now.